as you race down the forbidden kingdom of the lost world of the pharaohs. Is that grave robbers behind you? Or was it that cursed mummy you disturbed earlier? Where am I, you ask? Egypt, the land of King Tut, Cleopatra the Great, Ramses the Great, first, second, and third. Egypt has it all, from mummies to delicious food delicacies. Egypt was one of the first recorded civilizations in history, with over 7,000 years of written records to back it up. To understand this great country, though, you needed a little history lesson in how it was shaped, formed, and crafted. Egypt is rich with history, as stated earlier, with hieroglyphics and written documents. But religion played a huge part in the Egyptians' life, as they saw it as one part of the journey of life. Ancient Egyptians believed in a mythology with its own version of gods and goddesses, which each had their own specialty. The most well-known god is Ra, the sun god. As stated earlier, Egyptians believed in an afterlife. Mummification was used to preserve the body, so the deceased's eternal soul would be able to reanimate in the afterlife. The mummification process we know today is not the same. It was developed over 1,000 of years to better preserve the body for afterlife. Now that we've talked about religion, mummies, let me talk about one of the most famous queens of Egypt, the Queen of the Nile, the great Cleopatra. As cunning as she was beautiful, Cleopatra had her hand in 3 of her siblings' assassinations, helped assassinate Alexander the Great, and was the product of incest. She's a good read. Really should look her up. Now that we have a sense of Egypt, and it's time to discover some of the more sweet side of modern day food delicacies of Egypt. Now, Egyptians are known for their lavish monuments to their pharaohs, but they also spare no expense when it comes to food. The most well-known dessert is Allah. This dessert is made of phyllo pastry, milk, double cream, nuts, and is sometimes topped with raisins, powdered sugar, and coconut flakes. Along with being super delicious, Allah also has a cool folklore story about its history and creation. It's said that a sultan was on a hunting trip and went to a nearby village and requested the most delicious dessert. So Allah took together everything she had left in her bakery and mixed it. And voila! Allah was burned. The sultan was so pleased with it, he named it after her. And it is a national tradition now and delicacy. Another great delicacy is basbousa, a sweet cake made of salmonella saturated in simple sweet syrup. Sometimes, though, the syrup is flavored with coconut or rose water. Last but not least is fritta, or fritta mashut. Is an Egyptian specialty. Its origins date back to ancient times where the pharaohs used to serve it as an offering to the gods. It is just a flaky, layered pastry that can be filled with a number of things, from cream cheese to minced meat. So it's good for dinner, lunch, breakfast, any time of the day. Now that we've got a sense of their food, history, let me talk about some of the iconic sites that can only be seen in Egypt. The most iconic and well-known site of Egypt is the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, standing at 479 feet. The architecture is unlike any other. Many scholars believe that the purpose of the pyramid is still unknown, but the most widely accepted theories and understanding is that it was constructed as a tomb for King Khufu. Other than the Great Pyramid of Giza, another great site in Egypt and of the ancient architecture is the Valley of the Kings, or a beautiful look into the gateway of the afterlife. Lies on the West Nile bank near Luxor, the burial ground for pharaohs such as Tutankhamun, Sit I, Ramses II, as well as queens, high priests, and other elites of the 18th and 19th and 20th dynasties. One of the more modern sites, but a must-see if you stop by Egypt, is the Museum of Cairo. It houses over 160,000 objects covering over 5,000 years of Egypt's past. It would literally, to see everything, take over 3 months. So, when you stop by and don't have 3 months to spare, some of the highlights of the museum that is a must-see is the Tutankhamun collection with the beautiful gold death mask, sarcophagus, and the royal mummy room, which houses over a dozen mummies. I mean, where can you see a mummy? Only Egypt. Now that you have a sense of their history, the food, and some of the sites that can only be seen in Egypt, I conclude you with this. As I started this speech, you may see Egypt a little bit differently. I cannot promise you cursed mummies or grave robbers, but I can promise you a great adventure. From the rich history of the Great Pyramids to the Museum of Cairo, Egypt is a must-see on your bucket list, and I would highly recommend going. But try not to get cursed by any mummies. Or you could. That'd be cool.